Hey, are you just getting into audio recording and you want to use Pro Tools as your main DAW? Well, today I'm going to show you exactly how to jump in and get recording fast. So let's go for it. So if you guys don't know, I'm actually an audio engineer, and I have been for the last 20 years or so. And I use Pro Tools on a daily basis. It's my main DAW. It's the one I choose to use mainly because that's what the profession dictates. It's kind of like how Avid Media Composer is what video professionals use to cut movies. That's moving more and more away from that since Final Cut and Premiere and DaVinci Resolve have come out. But it's that same kind of thing. Pretty much everybody uses Pro Tools. Most production facilities use Pro Tools, especially for post-production. That's kind of what you need to know to be a professional audio engineer. If you want to work for somebody, if you're doing your own thing, you pick whichever DAW works best for you, and that's what you go with. But I'm just going to show you quickly how we can get up and recording fast. And then later on, we'll do a video on why I choose to use it as my daily driver. So let's take a look. All right, so once you have Pro Tools installed and you launch the program, the first thing you're going to encounter is the dashboard here. And if you don't want to see this every time you launch Pro Tools, you can just uncheck Show on Startup down here in the lower left corner. This is where you're going to do a lot of different things, least of which is create a new session. So let's take a look at it and go through each section of this window. Along this left side, you have three different selections. You have a Create, where we're actually going to create a session. You have Recent, which has a recent test that you have done, and you can just launch it from there. Projects is where you would create a session that is in the cloud. And this is if you're going to be using the collaboration feature that comes with Pro Tools, but we'll take a look at that in another video. Now, before we jump into actually creating a session, what we need to do is select our audio engine. And we're going to do that by going to the Setup menu up in our menu bar, and we were going to go to Playback Engine. And here's where you're going to select exactly which interface you want to use in this Pro Tools session. Now, I'm on a Mac, so we have quite a few different options, including some aggregate I/O, but I'm going to select my Scarlett Solo USB because I've got that plugged into my Mac here, and it sounds pretty good for a $100 box. Okay, now that we have our playback engine set up, now we can create a session. So you can do this one of two ways. You can go up to the File menu and select Create New, but as you can see, we have a Command-N shortcut key that we can use. And all that does is it brings up our dashboard again, where we can create a new session. Now, at the top here, we have the name, which we're just going to call Audio Test 1. And we are going to save it to a local storage, just my external hard drive. And when you do that, they call it a session. You can see below, they also have cloud collaboration, in which they call it a project. And below that, you can create either a local session or a cloud-based project and create it from a template. But for us, we're just going to do it on the local storage, Audio Test 1. And down here, we are going to select a few different options. The first is the file type, and most of the time, you just want to stay on broadcast wave. That's kind of the industry standard. I've actually never recorded an AIFF, but I usually just stick broadcast wave. Bit depth, this usually depends on the software itself, on whether it supports up to 32-bit floating point. So we are actually just going to stick to 24-bit. Now, sample rate, that depends on your hardware. So my hardware will go up to 192 kilohertz. This little teeny Scarlett Solo will do 192. But for our demonstrations, I'm just going to do 48. This is a good sample rate to start out with. 24-bit, 48K, it gives you higher quality than CD, and it won't eat up a lot of hard drive space, and it won't be difficult for the software to play back later. I've been in many situations where I've opened up a 96K session and it's maxed out my CPU power on my laptop. So we're just going to leave it at this and go from there. Down here, you can actually set up a default location on where you want to store each of your sessions that you are creating. I usually like to select prompt for location. So that means when we hit create, it'll say, hey, where do you want to save this? And I'm going to say I want to save this onto the desktop. And this is what we are presented with. But before we jump into creating a track and recording, we need to make sure that our inputs and outputs are set correctly. So we are going to jump into the setup menu again and I/O. And this brings up our patching for our inputs and our outputs. And it's very straightforward. It's in a grid pattern. So for instance, on here, I can see that I have my 2 inputs coming in from my Scarlett Solo. Now, if you want to start from scratch, you can delete a path, and then you can either hit default, and that'll put that default path name back in. But for me, I want to create 2 mono inputs. I don't want them to be stereo linked like that. So I'm going to select that, hit delete path, and then I'm going to just hit a new path, and I'm going to create 2 new mono inputs. And add default channel assignments, that'll assign them for us. So let's hit create. And you see what that did there is that assigned them automatically. But let's do one other thing. Let's actually get rid of that. And let's say don't add default channel assignments. Let's do 2 mono tracks. We'll hit create. And that created 2 mono inputs. And we can come over here with this pencil tool and select where we want those to come in. Now we could switch those if we wanted to. We could have input 2 coming in from 1 and input 1 coming in from 2 for whatever reason you'd want to do. All right, so once we have the inputs set up, we need to make sure our outputs are correct. And in this case, we do want a stereo output. Now this, on mine, all I have is 2 outputs. I have a stereo out that mirrors to the left-right outputs on the back and to the headphone output. So it's just 1 stereo output. So we're going to leave that as it is. It's the exact same way that if you want to delete that and then create your own, you definitely can. Also below here, we want to make sure that we set our monitor path and our audition path. A lot of the times this is also set up by default for you, but we just want to double check and make sure. Since we only have the 1 output, it kind of set it up for us. So we're just making sure all of these are set to output 1 and 2. Meter path, that's for a different set of meters that is usually found up here. And then your AFL, PFL, we definitely want to set output 1 and 2 for that. All right, so now that we have our inputs and outputs set up, we can actually go and create a track on the edit window. Now, this is the edit window here, and we'll see in just a minute on how all the different tracks stack up. It's very similar to other DAWs, but we'll take a look. And back in the day when there really wasn't any other DAWs out there, Pro Tools is kind of the only one, the big one that the pros were using. And once these other companies came along, they started creating ways of doing things within a DAW that we never thought we needed. And I'm going to show you one right now. If I wanted to create a track here in Pro Tools, all I have to do is double click and there's a track. And if I want another one, I'll just do another one. And then all the way down, I can do as many as I want, at least within Avid's guidelines. But we're actually going to delete all those, and I'm going to show you a different way. Now, I don't know if you noticed there, but when I double click on that, this is giving me a stereo track. There's a couple different ways you can tell. If you see the meters here, there's 2 of them. And so we know we have a left and a right channel. And there's also 2 different pan values here. One is for the left channel, one is for the right. Now we don't want a stereo channel because we were not capturing a stereo source. So we're going to delete that. And I'm going to show you 2 ways to create a track other than double clicking. If you go up to track in the menu section and you hit new, it brings up this dialog where we can select what type of track we want. We can do that another way with a key command. And on Apple, it's Shift Command N. On PCs, it's Shift Control N. And it brings up this dialog. And here is where we can get a mono track. So we just want to create 1 mono audio track. There's other options here too, where we can select stereo, LCR, LCRS, all the way down to 712 and other things. We're running Pro Tools Ultimate here. So this is the top of the line Pro Tools that they offer. On your regular Pro Tools, this is the standard version. You're not going to have all of these options. You'll have a few. I think it's mono stereo, maybe LCR. It might just be mono stereo, to be honest. But really, that's all you need for creating music and mixing music. When you get into post-production, that's when you need those other audio tracks. And then we have a different type of track here. We have an audio track, an aux track, master VCA, MIDI track, instrument track, and video track. But we're just going to stick with a mono audio track because that's what we want. Now, I could name it here, but I'm going to show you a cooler way to do it, especially if you're creating multiple tracks at once. And by the way, you can do that here. If you wanted to do 16 mono tracks, you could do that here, but we're just going to do 1, mainly because we only have 1 microphone input. All right, so because it is a mono track, it automatically assigned the input to this track as input 1. Let's delete that. And if I create 2 tracks, it'll auto assign it input 1 and input 2. So if you have 16 inputs and you create 16 channels, it'll automatically assign your inputs 1 through 16. Now we're going to delete this second one because, like I said before, we only need 1 track. And right here is your I/O section that I was alluding to earlier. This is where you can select what input you want. So we could select this to input 2 if we wanted to. If we had our source coming into input 2, we could. But I'm going to go to input 1, and then it automatically sets it to output 1 and 2, which is what we want. That's our headphone and our master stereo output of our Scarlett Solo. Now, earlier I said that we could rename our track in that little dialog box when we create a new track. But there's another way to do it. If you double tap on the name itself, it brings up this little dialog. We're going to call this lead Vox. And then you can put comments down here, like if you want to say like it's a U87 male Vox kind of thing. You can put those comments right there. Okay, now that we have our inputs and our outputs set up, we are ready to record. But before you record anything, we want to make sure we have signal and get a proper level. On the side here, underneath the name of the track, we have a record button, an input monitor button, a solo button, and a mute button. And the two that we will use to get the proper level into the DAW is the input and the record. Now, the input is something that we can use if we just want to hear the input on the track. It will not play back anything on the track. So if I was here and I hit play and it was playing back some audio, I would only hear what is coming in to Pro Tools through that input. I wouldn't hear what's actually printed on the track. So that's one way we can check our level. We can select that and then adjust our gain like this. So I'm turning up that mic pre right now. Check. Hey, 1, 2, and we're getting a good level there. But it also gives you input monitoring if you just select the record button. So you hit the record button, and now we can see that our microphone is bumping. It's got some decent level there. I'm actually going to bring it back just a teeny bit. And now that we have our input and output selected, and we have our track record enabled and named, we can hit record. And there's a couple different ways you can do that. Now, when you're recording, we have the transport functionality up here. We have the transport controls. And I believe in the more basic versions of Pro Tools, they still have a transport here. We can also have a simplified transport like that, or an expanded transport that gives you post-roll and pre-roll and all that stuff. We're just going to do a basic, standard transport. And in order to record, the long way to do it is you hit the record button, it starts flashing, and then you hit play. And now we are recording. We're recording my voice off of my microphone, and that's pretty much it. And then we can hit stop. 2 quicker ways to do that is by using another key command. And this all depends on whether you have a 10 key or not, a keypad on the side of your keyboard. I have one on this one, but I'll show you another way that I actually learned how to do before I learned or got used to using the keypad. So if you don't have a keypad or a 10 key, what you're going to do is hit Command Spacebar. Oh, and by the way, on PCs, it's Control Spacebar. Now, a funny thing might happen if you hit that specific key command on a Mac is Spotlight Search will come up. Now, you definitely don't want that. We can go into our system preferences in Spotlight and keyboard shortcuts, and we can deselect this one right here, Show Spotlight Search, because that's what causes it. If I select that and I hit Command and Spacebar, it brings up Spotlight Search. Well, we don't want that, so we deselect that. And now in Pro Tools, we can hit Command Spacebar, and that'll start recording. And we've got everything running. And what we call this here is we call this the Pink Recording Band of Love. That means everything is good. And we can just sit back and let it roll. Now, if we jump to the keypad, it's a whole transport within itself. And we can run this a couple different ways. The 0 button is play and pause, or play and stop, I should say. And then the record button is the number 3. So it just jumps it into record and starts rolling. You don't even have to do anything. You just hit 3. And then you can hit 0 to stop. There's also a functionality here. If you have the quick punch enabled, you just right click on the record button, hit quick punch. And then if you hit 3, and then you hit 3 again, it'll just quick punch in and out every time you hit it. So if you're doing a punch in on a guitar solo or something and it's coming up to it, That's how you'd punch it. Now, if you want to use the keypad as a transport control, and for some reason it's not working, go to your setup menu, go down to preferences, and under operation tab, under the operation tab at the top, you'll see numeric keypad, and you want to check transport. If it's on one of these other ones, it will not work. So that is pretty much it, guys. That is how you get Pro Tools set up and ready to go and get recording. And there's really not a lot to it. It's very, very simple and very straightforward. You just need to know where to look to set up your inputs and to get signal into the DAW. That's pretty much it. So I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumb up if you really liked it. If you want to ask any questions, if you have any questions about Pro Tools or how you operate it, or even give any suggestions to what I've said here, because let's be honest, I'm not really that smart. So if you have any additional suggestions on how to quickly set up Pro Tools and get into recording, put them in the comments below. I come by and will answer any questions you guys have, usually once a day or so. I roam through the comments and see what you guys are saying and try to answer it to the best of my abilities. And if you like this Pro Tools content and want to learn more, let me know, because I'm more than happy to make more and more of these videos. So let me know in the comments. Go do that right now, and we'll see you guys in the next video.